There's no question that Billy Carson is a fraud, without question. How do I know? Well, he recently had a debate. Now, he's going around all over trying to impugn the Bible, which tells you a lot about his heart as well as intellect, because I don't understand how anyone can look at the Bible and see, because it's the only book, and I mean the only book on the planet with predictive prophecy that has come true. That is more than enough. You don't find errors and falsehoods in it. You don't find the Bible saying something that didn't happen, any sort of historical account that wasn't true. You don't have it making, though it's not a scientific book, making any things that relate to science that also is not true. Everything that it says, it's true. It's verifiable to the degree that it can be verified, meaning that can you verify that Jesus actually walked on water? Well, no, there were no cameras. There's no DNA evidence to prove that. But the things that we can prove, it has done. Namely, it's many, and I mean many prophecies that have come true, save those that are yet to come true, such as the second coming. However, that being the case, and that should be it more than enough, there are always going to be those detractors, those people who are going to have something to say, such as a Billy Carson. Now for us, and I'll come back to this text again, but Peter says this: sanctify Christ in your heart and always be ready to make a defense to everyone, Pontu, whoever it is that asks you to give an account of the hope that's within you. Now, there's different ways to go about doing it, and it may have to do with something having to do with apologetics, why you believe the Bible is true and things like that, or why you believe what you believe doctrinally. In this case, we're talking about why you believe the Bible is true. So he's going around to different platforms, talking to different people, trying to get any and everyone, whoever he can, to listen that the Bible is not true. It's made up. It's fictitious. The crucifixion is not real. Well, it tells you what kind of person that is, the kind of heart that is. Who could possibly be behind that? Who could be the very person that would say, did God really say that? That's not what he meant. Oh, I know. Satan, like he did in the Garden of Eden. So we know what is behind this guy, Billy Carson. Oh, by the way, his name is not Billy Carson. The name was changed. I don't know, legally or illegally. I don't know if it's just a pseudonym, a fictitious name. His actual name we'll discover in a little bit. We'll see that this person is literally a fraud. But before we get there, and I'm going to also link you to a couple of different videos where someone else has a better expose on this. But I want you just to listen to him going around telling everyone and anyone what he believes about Jesus.
In your book, you talk about, in the Emerald Tablets, you talk about how the Emerald Tablets came 36,000 years before Jesus even walked the earth.
Yes.
And Jesus, when we talk about Jesus, he was a student of the Egyptian mysteries.
Yeah.
He learned reincarnation. He learned, what else? In India, right? In meditation.
In India, he learned the mystic arts. In Tibet, he learned Qigong and Reiki, healing with the hands.
Yeah.
Confirmed by the Dalai Lama, by the way, in recent times, as the information has been handed down and passed down from Dalai Lama to Dalai Lama.
So he's gone to India. He's gone to Tibet. Now, think about this. First of all, the only time that he could have done so was before he began his ministry. And the question is, how did he get there? You know how unless he's God, which is not what Billy Carson's going to admit, to travel there and to get back safely, to know how to get there and get back, it's just stupid. It's preposterous, and there's no account of that. He literally makes things up as he goes. Now, there's an old tactic. You confuse people, you can sell them. So you can tell them something that they have no way to verify, or they probably haven't heard or taken time to verify, and say, oh, I didn't know that. And it makes you not want to speak up because you don't want to be shown to be incorrect. Have no fear, this fool, and that's what he is, this particular foolish person will try to get you to doubt what it is you believe, but believe what the Bible has told you. Now, he will tell you that Jesus was not, is not who he says he is, and that he was not crucified. And listen to the different platforms he goes on, and to which books he's specifically referring to, or which collections, which writings are saying this.
12, he shows up in Egypt, and we know that's a fact because I take people on tour every year to Egypt, and I take them to the house that Jesus lived in. It's a crypt. It's actually worship. People come there to see that bed that he laid in every single year. When I take people there, we take them straight there. And we know the path that he traveled throughout Egypt because it's a huge sign outside that Coptic church where he lived that shows where he went. Now, when he was in Egypt, what did he go there for? To learn the Egyptian mysteries. Who taught the Egyptian mysteries? Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. And so Thoth was the teacher of the Egyptian mysteries, or the ancient mysteries of what it was called. And then he leaves there and he goes to Tibet to learn Qigong and Reiki healing, which was confirmed by the Dalai Lama. And then he heads down into India to learn the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back. Jesus was crucified.
Whoa.
Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible.
What happened
It
to
doesn't
him?
exist in the book of Barnabas. But they left that out of the Bible on purpose. You know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not. I give you all these prayers and verses off the top of my dome because I did them so many times.
Right.
And so, you know, just doing that, it became a part of me and understanding like, okay, well, there's something here. But at the same time, because I studied it so well, I recognized a lot of discrepancies that didn't make any sense to me before I came across the ancient tablets. In the Sinai Bible, there wasn't even a crucifixion.
Really?
Yeah, no crucifixion in the Sinai Bible.
What happened?
The biggest day in the history of their own lives would be the day that he was crucified, and nobody wrote it down. Nobody said, you know what, we better take note of this one. Do you know why they didn't take note of it? Because he didn't die. If you look at the Gospel of Barnabas, if you read the Gospel of Barnabas, you discover that Jesus never died on the cross. If you read the Sinai Bible, now the Sinai Bible has a couple of names. There's a secondary name to the Sinai Bible. It's called the Codex Sinaiticus. Codex Sinaiticus, also known as the Sinai Bible. So he goes on the Andrew Schultz show. Jesus was not crucified according to the, as he calls, the Sinai Bible. He's saying it incorrectly. The Gospel of Barnabas. He goes on to David Bett, that goes on his show. He's on Joe Rogan. He's on Nick Cannon, saying the same thing, and he's saying that this is understood and found in the Sinai Bible. He's saying it incorrectly, and he's also saying that this is also in the Gospel of Barnabas. Well, there's a problem with that. He actually gets challenged by David as to, have you ever had these conversations or these debates with someone?
Who have you debated?
Whoever did debate.
Have you ever had like a public debate with anybody? Like it's on YouTube, we can see, or no?
Haven't had a public debate. There's only one person that wanted to debate me, but he only wanted to debate me so that he can clout chase.
Is he a big name or no?
Well, he's not a big name. He's trying to become big, but you know, I looked him up first. I researched him before I disagreed to do it, and found out that he had did some things like, he had a sexual abuse on a 19-year-old minor. And I'm like, why would I make a guy like this famous?
Who is this guy? Is it another YouTuber or?
Yeah, I won't give his name because,
okay.
Yeah.
You're open to debating anybody?
I'm open, yeah.
Okay, so if we set up anything with anyone else that's maybe expert in the area of topic that you're okay with a panel like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So now he says that I don't know if he's making this up or not, but he's never had a public debate, which it's kind of odd. You make these statements in the midst of all of these Christians, and no one's wanting to debate you. Are you really? I know a lot of people that want to debate you. And the problem is he spoke up too much. He put his big foot in his mouth, and an actual scholar, took him up on that.
If you want to, I guess, go first, Billy, as to how you came about like the findings where it seems that Jesus was not crucified, or that's not accurate.
The statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay. According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible. The text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary. According to some scholars, it's a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree.
And so he meets with an actual scholar, Wesley Huff, who is an actual scholar. He understands what he's doing. He's an historian, working on his PhD. So I guess technically he's not a scholar, but hey, only because he hadn't had the actual letters behind him. But this man knows his stuff. He looks like he's about 12 or 18. He looks real young, but he knows his stuff. And so listen to a little bit. I'm going to play a lot of this interaction between the two, and just listen to how, one, Billy gives his confidently why he says the same thing that he's been peddling and shoveling to people. Now he's got someone that can accurately and confidently and intelligently and scholarly rebuke what he's saying. And Billy is lost for words.
Some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
when you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible called, I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus, like the codex that comes? Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library. So you can go and see it. It's on display. And the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the only reason I asked for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring, when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, mm-hmm. where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers?
Where was that?
When you got someone that's got books on their shelves and they read the books and they cover something like Codex Sinaiticus because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's calling it the Sinai Bible. It's Codex Sinaiticus, and he says that there is no account of the crucifixion in Codex Sinaiticus. Now, before I let Wesley finish doing what he's doing, let's go here. I actually have it on here on this particular software. Let's just pull up Codex Sinaiticus and let's go to John chapter 19. Now, as you see, in the middle, you have when Jesus says, therefore, when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, it is finished. He bowed his spirit and gave up the spirit. Well, we obviously know that this is Jesus on the cross, his last words. And then when we come over here, we can see those very same words being put here when we says, therefore, when he received, so here's the word, alaban, he received the sour wine, haxas, which is the sour wine. In the English, it says Jesus, but it's not there in Codex Sinaiticus, he said. And so you might see Jesus put there in other translations because to understand who is saying it, but he says, Apen, he said, the telestai. And then he says, then Akai, Klinas, which he bowed, the head of his, Kephalin, which is his head, and then he gave up the spirit. So we see this over here, the Codex Sinaiticus, that's written in all capitalized Greek letters. And so that's how this is written. So you can go and see clearly he's wrong. It's actually there. But what does he say? He says, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I meant the other book. I meant the Gospel of Barnabas.
That piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing, actually. I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
So you say you misquoted as the Gospel of Barnabas, but all these times you've gone on all these different shows, all these different videos stating the Sinai Bible. You are a fraud, and he's being shown this. And we're going to see what happens because he's thoroughly discredited and embarrassed. But before we get there, let's let Wesley finish showing how much of a fraud this man is.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's good. So let's deal with that too, because I've actually worked with, there are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish, we see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are 2 apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to like around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian, and I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. So if we're talking about, say, Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus. So I have a facsimile behind me of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete, just the what it's made out of. So
it's on.
I got that from ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
guys, I'm just
I
trying
can
to sound
actually
smart for a second.
I have that papyrus at home.
Oh, that's
So I'll show you this. So the documents you actually see on my bookshelf behind me are facsimile papyri that I've made. So when I was in Egypt last summer, I went and I got made for me some papyrus sheets. And so I take these papyrus sheets, which are made from the papyrus plant. And then when I go and I look at actual manuscripts, so I was at the University of Philadelphia last summer, and I went and I saw a document called P1, which is a 3rd century fragment of the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. And so what I did is I sat down with that original and I produced a facsimile. So I copied the text. First of all, I cut it out with an X-Acto knife in not the original 3rd century one on my papyrus. I cut out with an X-Acto knife this guy, and then I copied the text transcriptionally on the front and the back. So papyrus is just simply, it's what it's made out of.
Yeah.
And so there's categorizing systems, and the standard one is called the Gregory Alland categorizing system. And so sometimes you'll see when manuscripts are mentioned, they'll have a GA and then a number behind it. If it's made of papyrus, you simply abbreviate the word papyrus to P, and then you have the numbering system. Mm-hmm. So P66, what I showed you earlier, that's this on the categorizing system. It's the 66th manuscript that was put into the system. It's from the Gospel of John. I also have, P46 and P47 on my shelf. which includes all 4 Gospels and Acts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. So the only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing is a thorough trashy, and he gets this. As a matter of fact, look how he retreats, because he's the one that, this is one of the main things that he brings up often, and he is so ready to retreat from this. Listen to this.
But that was the original question. So yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, well, so I'm going off of what we've already talked about. So you've said you explore the text. I don't deny that. But the evidence, by going off of what you have put forward in terms of the actual documentary evidence, is not just less than convincing in my respect. And I mean this with respect, because I think you have done a lot of research. You've traveled to these places. I have too. Like, this is what I do as my career. But I'm not really getting indication, because in history, we go to the primary sources in their primary languages. And when Mark asked, okay, why do you deny the crucifixion? The sources you used were not primary.
Okay, we're still talking
and
about the same thing over and over again. There's so much more we can talk about here. We're wasting a lot of time. There's so much more. That's this amount.
Do you guys...
There's so much more stuff to talk about.
He's saying there's so many more stuff to talk about. You're the one that brought this up. And so whether it takes 5 minutes or an hour, let's thoroughly deal with this. And he clearly recognized that he's been debunked. He's been defeated. Let's move from this. Now, I'm going to also put a link in the description to a website where I started seeing some of this. His name is Anton Wisbicki, and he brings up something that I've heard before. Didn't think too much about it, but he shows that this person, Billy, is literally a fraud. I don't mean fraud as he's fraudulent, but he is literally a fraud. Someone who has tried to put forth fraud on someone, identity theft, to use someone's name, social security number to get money and things like that. This man is literally a fraud.
2013, you got arrested for fraud. Here is Billy's court records that I pulled up from the Broward County website. On December 18th, 2013, the defendant, William Carson, this was before he changed his name, was arrested for using a fictitious ID card in the name of Charles Rubin to fraudulently open a Chase checking account at Chase Bank. So, following in the vehicle's center console, this is what was found. A Florida driver's license in the name of John Black Knight. Okay, so that's not Billy. An Amex Costco card found in the name of John B. Knight. I don't need to read all of it, you can see it right here, but he says, after waiving his Miranda rights, William Carson admitted to opening the 2 Amex accounts, the American Eagle account, the Barclays account. He advised investigation revealed. In 2013, the defendant opened at least 6 credit accounts. 6! Using Tony Bellamy's real social security number without his authorization. For each of the 6 accounts established, Tony Bellamy's name, date of birth, phone numbers, address were not used. Each credit account had an account balance. The following names and dates of birth were used in addition to the social security. Wow. Long story short, I'm pretty sure he ended up going to the jail. Here he goes. I read defendant Miranda rights via card, which he waived and admitted that the license was fictitious. Defendant advised that he purchased the license off of the street in Miami. This is 11 years ago. Not even. Yeah, it's literally like almost exactly 11 years ago. Defendant advised that his credit is bad and could not open an account under his real name. Defendant signed consent form to search his vehicle where I found another Florida driver's license in the name of John Black Knight. I also found a Florida Power light bill in the vehicle with the name Charles Rubin on it.
Now, how much of a fraud this person is, he literally shows up at this man's home, not this man's home, but I guess his clients, to try to get him to not put this video out. He doesn't want this video shown. He's so bothered, so embarrassed that he shows up at this man's house at 2:30 in the morning, bring his own personal cease and desist order. First of all, a cease and desist order has no weight behind it unless a court says so. But him bringing it there at 2:30 in the morning, what kind of person does that?
And because you got exposed for knowing nothing about Christianity, you freaked out. You freaked out so much that you were knocking at my client's door at 2:30 a.m. in the morning with legal papers, acting like you have the power to enforce some type of "you got served." You guys, this is the type of person Billy is. Like, he does have a brain injury, so maybe there is something like literally wrong with him. I don't know.
Someone that is thoroughly touched in the head. This is a person that is clearly used by the devil. Maybe he has a demon. I don't know. Demonic. Of course, you don't have to have a demon to be on Team Devil. You could just do it on your own. So the devil probably has no need to worry about him. Just lets him go on his own, because this is the kind of person he is, a fraudulent, lying person. And so everyone ought to know, the word should be out, that this man cannot and should not be trusted. He's not even worth your time to even have a debate. Now, that being the case, I want to go back to something. When he says to always be ready to give a defense, what if you feel like you just don't have it in you to debate? When someone like a Billy Carson comes up who's lying, but you don't know that, how do you defend that? Well, all you need is what you already have, is the Bible. And so if you don't know it well enough, then just say, be honest, I don't know it well enough, but I'll come back to you. I'll get back with you. You don't put yourself out there as the expert, but there are prophecies. Again, I think that ought to be the main point. Look at the prophecies, what it says. What about it is not true? You say this is true, but many other scholars have said otherwise. And so what about this is not true? What about these prophecies? There's no one, not even Billy Carson or whoever else, that can get around these prophecies. And if the prophecies are true, well, then clearly with the book that they're contained in, then what it says about, namely Christ, also is true. Again, whether you feel like you're confident enough to handle someone, even if it's someone who is actually reputable and not a fraud who disagrees, because there are those people out there who are not fraudulent, not intentional fraudsters, but do disagree. How do you handle them? Well, again, go to your word. That's all you have. And if they say something like, well, I don't want you to use the Bible, well, then I'm sorry, sir. That's all I have to give you. I'm only going to use the Bible. Now, if you want to engage in more apologetic studies, then be my guest. Matter of fact, that's a great thing to do. But don't feel like you have to be so well versed in these things, in textual criticism and archaeology and history and things like that, that's the only way that you can defend your faith. You know your testimony, and that's good. There will always be these people who are in leagues with the enemy who want to destroy or distort the text, to do just what Satan did in the garden, to get you to believe that is that what the Lord said. We know it is. And so keep being faithful, keep reading the word. And when these guys come, give what you know confidently. Make sure they can't dissuade you. Whether you can convince them or not, that's not the point. But always be ready to give a defense to those who ask you, even if you got to go back and do extra research. Amen.